a certain targeted percentage of a bonus to your base salary, as well as an equity, package is included in the offer. But typically it's more about the bases, which is okay. It gives us a starting point, right? That's reality.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
Randy, I have one more question. So in the previous screenshot, you have shown the base salary and the equity and the bonus amounts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the equity, basically, most of the companies would split it into multiple years, right? So is it per year, or whatever is mentioned there?
Yes. Yeah. So for the Apple pieces, Apple's equity is whatever the initial grant divided by 4 years. So the amount that you see, if I go backwards, let me back up real quick. If you see this number, like in the very first offer, you see that 48K for ICT4 for the MLA. So basically that's 48 per year. So 48 times 4 was the equity package.
Okay. The 36K is the stock, that is the equity, I believe.
Oh, sorry. Yep. Sorry. You're right. Yeah. 36K. Yeah. The middle one. Yep. My fault. Jumping ahead of myself. Okay. Yeah. So 36 times 4 in this case.
Wow. And then I have a question on this.
Shoot.
So you said it's like I was seeing like it's a 4 year and divided equally to 4 years. So what happens after 4 years? You get it's a same amount again or some different amount again, or that's for the 4 years only?
Typically, and we'll get into this a little bit too, you have refreshers, right? You have to be there a year, have a performance review, and then they do refreshers. And by refreshers means they give you another set amount of stock, typically that vest over a 3 or 4 year period, every year. So the idea is that you have your initial grant. Let's see if everybody can follow this. You have your initial grant. Let's say your initial grant's $100,000. So at the end of year 1, you get $25,000 vest. But then you get a refresher that, let's say, that vest over 3 years, and that number is, let's just say it's 75,000. Okay, great. So then at the end of year 2, you get your 25,000 plus you get your 25,000 from the first part of your refresher. Now you're going to get another refresher at that year. So ideally, when you get through your first 4 years and then that initial grant's gone, you have multiple layers of refreshers vesting every year.
I see. Okay.
Kind of makes up for that.
Okay, thank you.
And that's just a hypothetical.
Okay, no, understood. And I have another question on the ranges. I've seen specifically for Colorado, they specify that this is the base range. My question is that the hard range, or you still have room for negotiation?
There's still room for negotiation. Typically, they're going to give you kind of middle of the road numbers, kind of what the midpoint is.
I see. Okay.
Yep. But it's a good starting point. You're not in the lower half, right? Right. But you're not in the upper half either, but you're somewhere in the middle. They may go up to the upper 75th percentile of the range. So there may not be a ton of opportunities to negotiate from there, but just as an FYI.
Yeah, thank you.
So, sorry, Randy, this is Sumit. Just a quick question on this slide. You had something like, sorry, I might have missed this. Asking for a range is the wrong thing. Sorry.
Yes.
So, could you help me understand what does that? What does that mean? So,
if you were to ask me right now, and I'm your recruiter, Randy, what's the range for the role? My response to you, which I mentioned earlier, is going to be simply, you know what? Why don't we go through the interview process? I need to understand where we're going to level you at. Even though you're applying for a senior software engineer role, you may come in, you may really do well on the interviews. We may up level you, or you may not do as well as we think, and we're going to down level you. So I'm not going to give the ranges because I don't know where the leveling is going to fall until after the interview is complete. A lot of times that's what happens, or I can simply give you low to mid, and that's it, right? I'm not give you the whole range. So when you ask for the range, a lot of times they're going to give you like low to midpoint, maybe 60th percentile of the range, and they're going to keep some, right? Because they have to be able to have room to negotiate. But you know what? Also, it's going to come on how well you interview, what the interview performance is, what the interview feedback looks like. So that's why we don't want to always ask what that is, because we may be leaving money on the table.
Okay, so I assume you're going to talk about the right approach than the wrong approach. Okay.
Absolutely. Yep. Okay. Yep. These are the mistakes we don't want to do.
Okay. And then, I'm curious to hear as we go deeper into this as why the process that you just explained, when if the recruiter is saying, well, we're going to go through the interview process and see what level we want to bring you at, and that's where the range is, then that gives both parties flexibility in terms of, so I see that as a potential good thing as well. So I'm kind of curious as to how that goes.
It is a good thing, but it also doesn't give you the answer you're looking for, right? If Meta calls you tomorrow, I'm not sure where you're at, but if Meta calls you tomorrow and says they want to do an interview and you say yes, and they tell you they want to interview you for an L5, which is a senior software engineer role, and you go through it, and at the end of the day, I say, hey, the interview went okay. They definitely want to move forward with an offer, but unfortunately, it's going to be for an L4. Now what? You're going to want to know, right? You want to know what the offer looks like, right? So a lot of times when you go through the interview process with these larger FANG type companies, a lot of things can happen, right? They get a solid understanding of your technical capabilities. Yes, they want to move forward. Yes, they're excited. Yes, maybe we can push the boundaries of the range, or they may say it's not as strong enough as we thought. Now all of a sudden they down level. Or maybe you crush interviews and then they up level it, right? Then it opens up a whole nother place. But so there is some flexibility with that, but it's still not giving any real data pieces to you. If I say we're going to kind of go through the interview process and kind of see how the team levels, what the feedback looks like in the roundup, and kind of make a level determination after that, that doesn't give you any insight until you actually go through it. Could be good, could be the same level you're looking at, could be a down level, could be potentially an up level. Most instances, though, most people either stay on level where they're at, or they may be down level. There are the rare cases where they go up. But we'll definitely talk through it.
Okay, makes sense. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Randy, I have a question here, right? So even if say I tell my range that what is the expectation I'm having, right? But that down leveling thing can still happen, right? So
Yep.
I mean that's not going to save me from anything, right? It's
no, and by giving yourself your range without having knowledge of your market value and what's out there, then you're basically limiting yourself to whatever you may say, and you may leave money on the table. That's the biggest reason why we don't want to give ranges, right? That's why we don't want to say, I want X or I'm looking for X. We don't, we need to know. The idea of this is that we need to know, right? We need to know our market value. That's what we need to know. We need to understand where we are in the market, what potential value looks like for us. That's first and foremost, right? That way allows us to know where we would like to be based on the organization and based on potentially the level that they're looking at having us, potentially interview for. We want to know those pieces. And we're going to talk about how we know what that is.
got it.
Hi, Randy.
Yes.
I have a question. So let's say that you're expecting more than what they're offering. Generally, how does that discussion goes?
That's where we're going to talk about leverage, right? So that's where we're going to talk about how we create leverage. I mean, especially if your expectations up here and they come in here, how can we get them to come to your expectations? That's where we'll talk through them. And there may be a point, right? There is going to be a point. Let's be all honest here. There's a point where they may not be able to get to here. They may get real close, but they may not get to here. They do have limitations, right? Recruiters have things with hiring managers, with compensation teams, internal equity, and and stuff like that they have to look at. So, they may not be able to meet your expectations. So that's why we typically we like to leave things very ambiguous. We don't like to talk about them until we get to the point where we have multiple offers in play. We're kind of down to maybe our top 3 or 4 companies. Then we can really start talking some numbers. And we'll get through all of this.
Thank you.
Hey, Randy, I have a question. So I was recently asked what is your expectation? And then I said, okay, I did not do my research, so I cannot tell you right now. But then recruiter was okay, I need some number right now. So I had to give something basically. So, once you give that number, I'm sure you're going to cover that. So maybe I can.
We're definitely going to cover it because that's the infamous first question on a recruiter phone screen. What's your expectation, right? We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
And how we can answer it and how we can come back to it. Shri, I see you have in here, what about equity in Google, Meta, and Amazon, et cetera? What is the average bonus percentage? Equity is just dependent upon, what they want to give. Google changed their equity package up recently to where instead of a 25% vest over 4 years, the initial equity package is 33% year 1, 33% year 2, and then the remaining amount equally over years 3 and 4. So I think it's, 22% each year. So it definitely goes down. Meta's is pretty standard. It vests starting immediately, but it's over a 4-year period. And then Amazon's is unique that it's not equity heavy until years 3 and 4. It's a 5% vest and a 15% vest. Then the remaining 80% vest in the last 2 years every 6 months. And bonus percentages are sometimes based on level and the role in the scope, right? They can range from 10 to 20. Some companies I've even seen where it's 30 and 40%, right? Just depending.
Want to become a software engineer at Google? You can, like thousands of our students. You just need to learn from those who've already cleared FANG interviews. At Interview Kickstart, our interview prep courses are developed and taught live by 150 plus instructors from Tier 1 companies like Google and Facebook. Our courses are tailored to help you crack software engineering domain interviews, including back-end, full stack, machine learning, embedded systems, data science, and more. To learn more, book your free webinar slot today